singing. Now it sounds so vital, vital. I look up at the moon and I wonder, will I be living there soon? Will I look back at my life down here as a waste or as my golden years? busy, 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 busy. Leave me alone, 'cause I'm busy, busy. Leave me alone, 'cause I'm busy, busy, busy. Leave me alone, 'cause I'm busy, busy. I tail, buzz, 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 my head. Antenna, buzz, 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 buzz.
button. Forward, backwards.
I'm a country boy with a brand new toy, but I don't know how to use it. I'm a country boy with a brand new toy, but I can only abuse it. I can only abuse it. Oh, I can only abuse it. Yeah. I can it. I can only abuse 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 it. Yeah.
was it stinky? What are you doing, Travis? This is a serious issue.
No vote, no vote, no vote, no. The animals have no vote. No vote, no vote, no vote. No vote, no vote, no vote, no. The animals have no vote. No vote, no vote.
We ain't got no vote.
No vote, no vote, no. The animals have no vote.
Was it stinky?
Vote.
No vote, no vote, no. The animals have no vote. The owls have no vote. We ain't got no vote. Was it stinky?
Owls live in the deep wood, and the deep wood's gonna die today. Owls live in the deep wood, and the deep wood's gonna die today. Developers kill the deep wood, hear the owls howl today. Developers plow the deep wood, plow the owls howls away. Owls live in the deep wood, and the deep wood's gonna die today. If we plow the owls deep wood, all the owls will fly away. Developers kill the deep wood, hear the owls howl today. Developers plow the deep wood, they plow the owls howls away. Deep wood, deep wood, deep wood, to desert, 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 desert. Deep wood, deep wood, deep wood, deep wood, to desert, 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 desert. Developers drain the wetlands, drain the wetlands, drain the wetlands to desert, 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 desert. Developers drain the wetlands, kill the wetlands, turn the wetlands into desert, 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 desert.
Shake your fist at the developers, and that will make you get your fist at the developers, and that will make you get your fist at the developers, and that will make you get your way. 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 Way.
Deep wood to desert, 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 desert. Deep wood, deep wood, deep wood, deep wood to desert, 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 desert.
howls away. They plow the owls howls away.
door. I don't wanna be inside no more. I'm tired of walls and the concrete floor. I need some stimulation. And it's outside that flickering screen, beyond the box of the RGB, and into the brownish bluish green. This ain't no simulation. Some songs they follow and follow. Some songs they follow and follow. Some songs they stutter and stutter. They can't get past your lips. Some songs you won't. Some songs they shout. Some songs work out, and they feel like iceberg tips. There's words and sounds and images and dreams building up inside of me. They just can't fit on the CRT. Do you see what I mean? If I tap my well, will it not dry? Should I save my thoughts for the rainy night? Should I have the time to fully transcribe the ideas as they come to me? I'm digitized. I'm fastening your eyes. I'm turning your mind from simulated skies. I'm digitized. I'm telling your mind. I'm clearing your eyes from the simulated skies. Go outside and see all this stuff, and I feel compelled to write it down. It's your
River Bridge. Top is at 89. I'll back up and shoot this part again. Energy's at like, I don't know, I'm doing good. Better than Glendu Bay. That was awful. Not awful, but I was tired on that one by this point. By the 3/4 point, I was tired. I'm not what you would call tired now. I'm just sweaty. All right. 3, 2, 1, go.